Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to H&H Live. We are back with the live streams, baby. We are back with the live streams. It's been a while since we did an actual podcast live stream. We did the NFL draft live. It's been like since like December since we've done like an actual like podcast live stream. How are y'all doing, man? We are back live. What's happening? What's happening? As you guys can see by the title, Jackson's phone isn't on silent. As you can see by the title, we're doing the Big 12 standings as we mentioned to you guys last week. Big 12 standings. These are super crazy. These were a little hectic to put together because of all the new teams coming in. We don't know how they'll like gel into the Big 12. We don't know how these teams that are still in gonna compete. Whatever. It's a crazy conference. Most of the conferences this year are going to be crazy. Like we've said every single episode that, these conferences are a little crazy, a little hectic. But yeah, man, let's get started. We are live. We are live. Let's get straight into it. Jackson, who is your, all right, explain, riddle me this. Who is your 14th team in the Big 12? There's 14 teams in the Big 12.
My 14th team is BYU.
What? No, you're lying.
I think
that's surprising. That's surprising.
Yeah, coming off an 8-5 record, they bring back 11 starters. I just think being in a new conference, and not playing as easy of a schedule as they have been usually play,
Yep.
I think they'll struggle the first year. So
I could see them struggling. I have them a little better. But yeah, I could see them struggling a little bit, just like you said. I'll touch on BYU when I get to them, but my 14th team in the Big 12 is West Virginia. I have them at 2-10. West Virginia's not very good. They lost a decent amount of players. They bring back 10 starters, and they only bring in 10 transfers. They have the number 48th recruiting class in the entire country. All I can say about West Virginia is they're not very good. Bob Huggins left the basketball team. That's really all I could. There's so much to talk about the football team that I'm going over to the basketball team. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about West Virginia. They're 2-10 this season, according to my predictions. Finished last in the Big 12.
I have a little bit better than that.
Not much to talk about last place teams. When you're bad, you're bad. 13. Who is your 13 in the Big 12?
At 13, I have another team struggling. That's Houston.
Okay.
They bring back 11 starters. They bring in Donovan Smith from Texas Tech to be the quarterback. They lose David. Is it David? I can't say his name. I'm not even gonna try. To Oklahoma, the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Their projected win total is 4.5. I got them at 5 and 7. So
I have them a little better. Yeah, I just have them a little better. I'll touch on them when I get to them. They lose a lot of guys to the draft.
Yeah, they did lose a lot to the draft.
13 for me. 13. Iowa State. Talk about a team who lost a lot of their guys to the draft. Will McDonald's gone, their best defender. Xavier Hutchinson, their best receiver to the draft. They lost Breece Hall and Brock Purdy last season to the draft. This team is just crumbling, and they're not doing much to bring guys back. Now they do bring back 16 starters from last year, but when you're coming off a not so great season, I say this a million times. When you're coming off a not so great year, and you show no signs of improvement. You keep the guys that were bad last year. You lose your most important guys, and you only bring in the number 140, the 41st class in the conference or in the entire country, and you only bring in 3 transfers. Not looking so hot, especially in a gauntlet like the Big 12. Yeah, I have Iowa State 1-8 conference, 3-9 overall record.
Wow, you're not very high. Old Matt Campbell.
I mean, Matt Campbell's a good coach, but he doesn't really have a lot to work with.
Yeah.
Like, this team's not very good.
Yeah, I can hear you. I see you. I hear you.
I mean, I could see them being better because Matt Campbell has always been that. Like, Matt Campbell has only done,
I took that into account a little bit.
Matt Campbell has only done, like, the only thing he's done is since being a coach is surprise us. You know what I mean? Like, ever since, they in that 2017 season when they beat multiple like top 3 teams in the same season, all they've done is surprise people. But They were disappointing a couple years ago in 2021. They had like playoff aspirations with that team. And they disappointed. But this team's not very good. They did bring back 16 guys, but this team is not very good. I'm beating a dead horse here, but yeah, Iowa State 3-9. Could see them being a little better just based off of Matt Campbell.
Yeah. At number 12.
Numero whatever 12 is in Spanish. What is 12 in Spanish? Do you even know? I'm not very smart. Numero 12.
I don't think that's it.
It's not it.
At number 12, this might surprise you, but I have Cincinnati at 5-7. I think it's a lot of turnover.
It is a ton of turnover. I think they have the most turnover in the conference.
Yeah, and they lose their top 6 wide receivers to the draft and the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
They lose Luke Fickell to Wisconsin. They bring in some guys. Yeah, I'll give them that. They bring in some guys. A lot of guys from Louisville they bring in, obviously.
Yeah, coming with the coach.
Coming from the coach from Louisville. First-year head coach, new conference. I can see him winning a couple more games, maybe going 7-5, but I think they'll struggle. I think most of these new teams will struggle in the Big 12.
Yeah, new era Cincinnati for sure. Fall from glory, to say the least. First group of 5 team to ever make the college football playoff. Luke Fickell. I said this in December when Luke Fickell left. Luke Fickell is probably the first and only coach ever to leave a playoff team for a better job.
Right.
Like, I mean, you could probably say that about Brian Kelly too. You could argue LSU's a better job than Notre Dame. But
yeah, you could argue it. It might be.
Fickell leaves Cincinnati for Wisconsin, goes to the Big 10. Cincinnati, ton of turnover in the offseason, like so much.
Yeah, they bring in Emory Jones to be the starting quarterback.
Woof.
Yeah, I kind of think the jury's still out on him, but
woof. Dan Mullen loves him.
Yeah,
he's like the only person. My 12 is UCF. UCF, they were pretty good last year in the American. Under Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn, first year UCF coach, I think. No, it was his second year. This is year 3 for him. UCF, top to bottom, is not a very talented roster. John Reese Plumlee pretty much carried their offense last year. They just didn't know what to do with him, running, passing, whatever. They bring back 12 guys. They bring in 12 transfers. They only have the number 50 class in the entire country. Like the Big 12 is a gauntlet. When you lose guys and you don't do a good job to bring them back in, like conferences like this, like the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC, if you lose guys and don't, bring back the same amount or better production from last year, you got a lot on your plate. Even with like Gus Malzahn as a coach, he's coming back to a Power 5 coaching situation. And the last time we saw him in the Power 5 wasn't looking great. He is a decent head coach. It's just going from used to coaching like teams in the American, now you're coaching against a 9-game Big 12 schedule,
Yeah.
it's going to be rough. I've UCF going 4-8. UCF's going to struggle. Not because I hate them because I'm a Memphis fan or anything, but just they're going to struggle, man.
Yeah, I could see it.
I just think it's real funny. Like UCF is obviously they're in Central Florida, they're in Orlando, and they're in the Big 12 in a very Midwest conference. Everybody,
they got to fall from glory too.
I know they were the Cincinnati before Cincinnati.
They were national champions.
Yeah, national champions. The exception over here obviously is BYU. Them and BYU's all the way on the west in Utah, and then the Central Florida's in obviously Orlando, and everybody else is either in Texas or in the middle of the U.S. And it's gonna be weird too with the Pac-12 or with the Big Ten when USC and UCLA go to the Big Ten.
When USC has to go play Ohio State in the snow or something.
Oh yeah, when USC plays a snow game in Penn State, and then they come back to Southern California. Let's go to the Big Ten, of all conferences. Yeah, we're in LA, Southern California. What powerhouse conference do we want to go to?
Well, we knew Lincoln Riley wasn't going to the SEC, so.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley is doing all costs at avoiding the SEC. Goes to the Big Ten. Good Lord. I don't know how the Big Ten's gonna schedule that, bro. It's gonna be something. I do not envy those guys that do that. You said you're 12 already. Number 11.
At number 11, this is where I have West Virginia at 5-7.
Okay, I can see them being all right because West Virginia is obviously a decent school.
They bring in 14 transfers, and I know I'm not usually very high on transfers, but it's 5th in the Big 12. They bring in Devin Carter from NC State, who was the leading receiver for NC State.
Mm-hmm.
I think they still have a quarterback competition going on. Obviously, I lose some guys. They bring in the 48th ranked national class. Projector wins at 5.5, and I got them winning 5. So
I have them under just a little bit, just a little bit,
just a little under. But I think they'll be a little bit better than what you have at.
Yeah, these rankings are not always going to be the same.
No, they'll probably win the conference.
Yeah. Your Big 12 champions, West Virginia. You know how much crap I would get for that? If they win the Big 12, I have them winning 2 games. What? This is where I have Kansas at number 11. Kansas, one of the many darlings of college football last season, winning 6 whole games. But their usual is usually 2 or 3.
It felt like 10. It felt
like they won the national championship last year, starting 5-0, and then they win a monstrous 6 games. Yeah, I was very high on Kansas last year. I picked them to win every game. Once we started actually picking their games. I have them going 5-7 here, just missing out on a bowl game. They do bring back 17 guys from last year. I could see them being a little better. My ceiling for them is probably 7 and maybe 8-4 if everything goes right. But I think the only reason them going 6-6 last year was because of how bad, every other team was that usually was good in the Big 12 last year. But Kansas, their ceiling for me is probably 7-5, 8-4. But I have them going 5-7 here. They bring back 17 guys, including, is it Jalen or Jaden? Jalen, right? Jalen Daniels, the quarterback. Bring in 12 transfers, including Logan Brown from Wisconsin, who was a pretty good tackle prospect. But they only bring in the 73rd ranked recruiting class. Kansas never going to be a hot recruiting destination because it's Kansas. But yeah,
not in football.
Not in football. In basketball, yeah. But football is not really like, yeah, I really want to go play football for Kansas. Like nobody's ever saying that. But yeah, Kansas at 11. But it's better than what they're used to. Like if back-to-back seasons of 6 wins and 5 wins is like revolutionary for Kansas football. So I think you only have things to cheer for, Kansas fans. However many of you there are.
Kansas football fans. There's a lot of Kansas basketball
A
fans.
lot of Kansas. You said you're 11, right? Was West Virginia?
Right.
Number 10.
At 10, this is where I have Iowa State. My first bowl eligible team at 6-6.
Okay, this is where I start having bowl eligible teams too.
Yeah. They bring back 16 starters. They lost a lot, like you said. I won't deny that. They did lose a lot.
They
Like
lost
their 3 best
so
players
much.
are gone. But yeah, Matt Campbell's going to win some games alone, I think. They might catch a hangover like with Oregon or somebody, I think maybe. Not Oregon. My bad, I'm in the wrong conference.
Oregon.
Oklahoma
Yeah.
or somebody maybe. I could see them catching a hangover game, win. I really said Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm tripping. But yeah, I got Iowa. Dang, I'm all over the place. I got Iowa State at 6-6 at number 10.
This is where I have Cincinnati at 6-6.
So 1 game better than me.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
like I think Cincinnati's good enough to make a bowl game. Like this is like this team lost a lot. If you're looking for a team with like this is probably a top 5 team in the nation with the most turnover. Like good gracious, they only bring back 8 guys. They bring in 15 transfers. They lose guys like Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker, their 2 best receiving threats, to the draft, and they only bring in the 74th best class in the nation. A lot of that contributes to Luke Fickell leaving, going to Wisconsin. But yeah, this team it's nothing to like, look away from because the team is still pretty decent, regardless of the turnover. But I think Cincinnati's built like a winning program there. So they'll at least make a bowl game this year. They won't be great because it is the first year in the Big 12 for them. So I don't think they'll be amazing, but they'll win a bowl game for me.
Yeah. I had them at 5-7, so I could definitely see.
Number 9.
My number 9 is Oklahoma State.
I have them a little better.
7-5. Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy has had a winning record for 17 straight years. I don't think that's going to stop this year. They have a lot of turnover too.
Yeah, this is like the Big 12 is just all over the place here.
Obviously, Spencer Sanders to Ole Miss is a big loss.
I don't know. Depends on who you ask.
I guess it does depend on who you ask, but when you have a guy that with that experience, I guess, but you bring in Alan Bowman.
He came from Texas Tech, right? Or he came from Oregon?
He started at Texas Tech, but he came from Michigan.
Michigan. I don't know where he went or came from.
They bring in some good guys, yeah, but like I said, a lot of turnover. They got 3rd best transfer class in the Big 12. I got them at 7-5. I could see them being better at one point during these. I did these 2 or 3 times. At one point, I had them like 8-4. So
yeah, it's the same things that they said about Cincinnati. They're a winning program, a lot of turnover, but it's Oklahoma State. They're gonna be good. That's one thing you can count on. Oklahoma State's gonna make a bowl game and be at least decent. This is where I have Houston. Houston is an interesting team. They bring in a lot of good transfers. They're bringing in a lot of decent transfers. They bring in 14 transfers. They return half their starters in 11, but they did lose Clayton Tune and Tank Dell, the staples of that Houston team from last year. in many years prior, and they bring in the 56th best class in the country. Houston's an interesting team. I think that the transfers they brought in will help a lot. Houston is used to playing Big 12 teams every year. Just like one or two, just every year. They're used to playing Texas Tech every year at least. But I have them going 7-5, ninth ranked in the Big 12. I think Houston is one of these teams that is prepared to play in the Big 12. Regardless of like the conference that they were in. Always a good team in the American, exceptional last year. They were all right. But Houston's going to be decent this year. A lot of turnover, just like pretty much every team here in the Big 12. But Houston 7-5, a decent record coming into the Big 12.
Where are we at? Was that 9?
Yeah, we're moving on to 8.
At 8, this is where I have UCF.
Okay.
At 7-5. Obviously, it's a little slide from the 9-5 they went last year.
Yeah.
They bring back John Rice Plumlee and 12 starters. They rank 26 in the country in transfers. And they add some guys. I think kind of like what you said about Houston. I think they are a little prepared to play in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Not
to me, obviously.
Yeah, and obviously not to you. But kind of like Iowa State, I kind of factored in Gus Malzahn being the coach, and that this isn't the SEC. Yeah. So I think they'll win some games off Gus Malzahn coaching them.
Yeah, I kind of maybe underrated UCF a little bit now that I look at it. They'll probably maybe at least make a bowl game. I could see that. 4-8 does seem a little harsh now. Now that I kind of analyze it. But yeah, who knows? Maybe like Big 12 is probably going to be the craziest conference this year.
Probably.
What are we on 8? This is where I have Texas Tech. Texas Tech is interesting. They bring in a good recruiting class. It's number 28 recruiting class in the country. They bring back 14 guys from last year. Only bring in 6 transfers, but Texas Tech is a good team, man. They did lose Donovan Smith, but Tech is a good team.
They also lost somebody else.
Tyree Wilson is a big loss too. Texas Tech is going to be a decent team. They were pretty good last year. I think they'll keep that trend this year. So it's really all I have to say.
That's all you got?
Yeah. It's not really much to say about it. Texas Tech is cool. Go 7-5.
Not bad.
7. Top half of the Big 12.
Oh, I gotta find my notes. At 7, this is where I have Kansas.
Okay.
At 7-5. I think Jalen Daniels coming back is big, along with 17 starters, which is the most in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
They bring in the 5th best transfer class in the Big 12. Obviously, their recruiting class wasn't great, but they bring in some good guys, I think, in the transfer portal, and I think that turnover should help them, or not turnover. Dang, I'm all over the place. That the returning starters should help them, I think, because you've been better every year at this point.
Yeah.
So I think them coming back will definitely help. Now Kansas 5.
I probably could have
one
win
better than last year.
I probably could have given Kansas a little bit of cushion and had them make a bowl game back to back. Did they win or lose against Arkansas? I know they had a crazy game against Arkansas last year.
They must have lost because they went 6-7 on the year.
Yeah, they lost that game. I know they almost came back and won. Crazy bowl game. I think it was the Liberty Bowl.
I really like Jalen Daniels too. Like,
Yeah, you could argue Kansas would probably won maybe 8 games if he was healthy. He was
That's obviously a big question mark too. Can he stay healthy?
he was balling last year before he went down. I probably could have given Kansas a little bit more wins. But I don't know. Somebody's got to be bad in the conference. Somebody's got to be
Somebody's
bad.
got to be bad.
Uh, yeah, this is where I have BYU. BYU is always one of those teams who's you can rely on to be at least mid. At least mid. They've been really good the past few years, but the guys that helped them be really good are gone. Like Blake Freeland, their best lineman is gone, and Jaron Hall, their quarterback, is gone to the draft. But they did replace him with Keaton Slovis in the transfer portal. A couple weeks ago, I didn't know. I thought Keaton Slovis was still on Pittsburgh. They bring back 11 guys. They bring in 13 transfers, number 18th transfer class in the entire country, and they bring in the number 66th ranked class in the entire nation. Big 12 is not very good at recruiting outside of like the top 3 or 4. I think BYU is going to be decent. Good, like a strong roster that they'll always have. Just you got to factor in they're in the Big 12 now, so they're not going against teams like North Texas every other week.
I think they also lost their top pass catcher, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so. He got drafted too.
Yeah.
I forget his name. It's some
Puka?
weird name. Yeah, some weird name. It was some weird name. Yeah, BYU, they lost like some big hitters in the draft, but they bring in Keaton Slovis, bring in a decent amount of transfers. Like they bring in 13 transfers in their top 20 transfer class in the nation. They bring in some good guys. So like being in an actual conference, BYU hasn't been in a conference since being in the Mountain West like so long ago. So they got to adjust to that, but I think BYU will, adjust accordingly and go 7-5. I have a lot of teams going at 7-5.
Yeah, me too, kind of.
Number 6, right? Yes, 6.
At 6, this is where I have Texas Tech at 8-4.
Yeah, just one win better than me.
Yeah. You've already pretty much touched on everything. Obviously, they lose Tyree Wilson and everybody else. They bring in the 57th best transfer class in the country. Gosh, I can't talk. And the 8th best big class in the Big 12. 4th best recruiting class in the Big 12. They went 8-5 last year. I got them 8-4 this year, so about the same.
Yep. Consistent as always. Most of these teams are. This is where I have the Baylor Bears 7-5. Dave Aranda has proven that he is a good head coach for the Baylor Bears. They only bring back 8 guys from last year, only bring in 10 transfers this year, but they do bring in some really, really good guys in the transfer portal. They bring in Ketron Jackson from Arkansas. They bring in Dominic Richardson from Oklahoma State. But they do lose a little some guys. They lose Siaki Ika to the draft, and they lose Jaden Ellis to Colorado, and they bring in a number 34 ranked recruiting class. Baylor's going to be decent. They won't win 12 games like they did a couple years ago. Obviously, I have them winning 7. But they'll be decent. Most of these teams are just going to be decent because the Big 12 is just like a big question mark. We don't know how most of these teams are going to do. That Big 12 is a big question mark.
Yeah, you pretty much hit it. At 5, I have Baylor.
Yeah.
For all the same reasons. Dominic Richardson's a big pickup. They get the Barrington brothers from BYU to play on that O-line. And then Ketron Jackson Jr. from Arkansas, yeah. Not much else to say about Baylor that you didn't say, so.
At 5, you said...
I got them at 8-4.
Yeah. At 5, you said Baylor. This is where I have Oklahoma State. I have them going 8-4. Like we said earlier, Oklahoma State's just always going to be decent because of Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy has only proven that he's a consistently, winning record coach. He's like the Mike Tomlin of college football. They only bring back 9 guys. They bring in 13 transfers, and they only bring in the 54th best recruiting class in the country. Now, if this is the year that Mike Gunley has if there is a year that Mike Gunley is going to have a losing record, it is this year, because the team's not great, and they lose a lot of guys, like Spencer Sanders, their lead guy at the helm, past few years. There is a year it's going to be this year, but not trusting Mike Gundy. He hasn't shown that we have any reason to not believe in him to have a good record. So I have them at the 5th spot in the Big 12, going at 8-4. Now, top 4, I think we have the same handful of teams here. It's just a matter of where.
Yeah.
Who is your 4?
This was tough.
It kind of was for me.
At 4, I have Kansas State.
Okay.
They bring back Will Howard. They went 10-4 last year. I got them at 8-4 this year.
Won the Big 12 last year.
I may have this number. I don't know. Like some of these transfers, the number of transfers has been off. I have them at 6 transfers. Have you got that?
I have 4.
Okay, well, I don't know. I got it off 24/7, I thought. But anyway, that's 9th in the Big 12, right?
Yes.
Okay. They bring in Trayshawn Ward to replace Deuce Vaughn.
I love that. I love that they did that.
I love that pickup. Deuce Vaughn gonna be a pretty big hole to fill.
They have a lot of holes to fill in this team.
Yeah, and obviously Felix say it for me.
Felix on UDK Uzama.
Good Lord, how'd you master that?
Win to the Chiefs.
Yes. So that's another glaring hole they got to fill. But they bring in some good guys, and I think they should be good enough to compete in the Big 12 again.
Yeah, they're always going to be decent. I've said that about pretty much every team in the Big 12. This is where I have TCU. Now, TCU is an interesting team. They bring in the 20th best recruiting class in the nation. They only bring back 11 guys. They bring in 9 transfers. They lost pretty much every good player on their team from last year. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson's gone. Quinn Johnson's gone. Max Duggan's gone. And I forget their running back's name. The guy who got hurt. And he was questionable for the national championship.
His name was Miles. I think his first name was Miles.
No, you're thinking of the basketball player. It's not him.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Dang, what was his name?
I think it starts with a K. I know. I just forget.
Yeah, you're right.
TCU's interesting. I still have them. Sonny Dykes is obviously coach of the year from last year. Did a tremendous job with that TCU team that everybody thought was just going to be But they made the national championship last year, so obviously you believe in Sonny Dykes to continue that. What was his name?
This is the only team I didn't write down their quarterback. I forget his name.
He started last year. He was a freshman. He went down, and then Max Duggan came back and
I forget his name.
Shocked everyone. Obviously, we weren't the most prepared for this, y'all. The Big 12 is really weird.
They got lost at the bottom of my notes, and I forgot to put their quarterback in.
They're gonna be decent because of Sonny Dykes. I know, and Sonny Dykes, he made the national championship last year. You obviously trust Sonny Dykes to have a good team. But this year I have them dropping a little bit and going 8-4.
Josh Hoover. I have TCU at 3.
Okay.
I think Trey Sanders will be able to fill that running back spot pretty good. I'm not going to say I don't think, but I'm curious to see if JoJo Earl will be able to fill that Quentin Johnson spot.
Mm-hmm.
Max Duggan's a huge loss. I got him at 8-4, just a slight drop off from the 13-2 playoff or national championship appearance.
Just a slight drop off. Not making the national title this year.
One pickup I like is Jack Beck from LSU, tight end.
Yeah. You said your 3rd was TCU. My 3 is Kansas State. Now, Kansas State, a lot of turnover. Lost a lot of guys. They bring back 12 guys. They only bring in 4 transfers, according to my sources. They bring in Trayshawn Ward from Florida State. They bring in Keegan Johnson, receiver from Iowa. But they lose like a lot of their good players. They did bring back Will Howard to play quarterback, but they lost Felix Onyeudeke-Uzama, Julius Brents, and Deuce Vaughn, all the best players at their respective positions on that team. I mean, I think Adrian Martinez is gone too. So, and they only bring in the 32nd. They bring in the 32nd best class in the nation. So, they tried their best to fill those holes, but all the guys that they lost were NFL caliber, and it's really, really hard to replace if you're not like a top program. So, Kansas State, always one of those teams that does more with less. Not this big flashy program, but they're always going to be a very, very scrappy, hard-nosed team that's going to win, around 7, 8, 9 games every year. And they won the Big 12 last year, so they go 9-3 for me. Now we up top 2, same for us. It's always been that. This is the trend for every conference. We have the same 2 teams every time, which is a little disappointing. Who do you have winning? Like who's your 1?
My 1 is Texas.
Darn.
Anticlimactic.
I know. Same thing every time. Except for the first one. I had Florida State at 1. I also have Texas at 1, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk about this as we're already on it. It looks like Quinn Ewers is going to be the starting quarterback. Obviously, they bring in Arch Manning.
The big story of the offseason, Texas is bringing in a stacked recruiting class.
Yeah, it's the 3rd national class, first in the Big 12. Not a very good transfer class, but it comes with the one comes with the other. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if you bring in a lot of transfers, you're probably not going to get a lot of recruits. You bring in a lot of recruits, you're probably not going to get a lot of transfers. They bring in a few guys. Obviously, replacing Bijan's not going to be easy, but
Texas
this team's going to be
historically knows how to bring in a running back.
Yeah, this team's going to be good.
Obviously, we have them winning the Big 12 in the regular season.
I got them winning the Big 12 in the regular season.
Is it 1? I have them going 11-1, 9-0 in conference. They bring back 15 guys from last year. They only bring in 4 transfers, but they bring in the 3rd best recruiting class in the entire nation.
I have them at 10-2.
10-2. Respectable.
I did have them winning at Alabama, though.
I had them lose. That's the game that I had them lose.
That's a game.
I know. It's that's going to be a real good game, especially the teams they saw each other last year. Now they're obviously not the same teams, but that's going to be a game for sure. Now Texas bringing a lot of guys in the offseason. Trying to find who they brought in. Now they only bring in 4 transfers, but they bring in A.D. Mitchell from Georgia, who was like a top 3 transfer in the country. They bring in Jalen Catalon from Arkansas, who was that team's best defender last year. They bring in Trill Carter from Minnesota, who was a great guy up the middle for Minnesota, who was top 5 defense last year. They bring in Ryan Sanborn, a punter. One of their 4 transfers was a punter. Now, Texas, they didn't only bring in 4 guys, but those 4 guys are very, very good. One of the top, probably you could argue, top 5 safety in the entire country, and you can argue this year he could be a top 10 receiver this year. So Texas only bringing 4 transfers. Those transfers are massive.
And they bring Xavier Worthy back.
Yeah, who's an electric receiver. He's a little disappointing last year, but when his freshman year, he was electric. They bring in the 3rd best recruiting class in the entire country. Obviously, bringing in Arch Manning from high school. Obviously, I was acting like he's a transfer. They bring in Arch Manning. Texas is going to be good. Quinn Ewers is obviously going to be a starter. unless something drastic happens from now until the season. But Quinn Ewers, you could argue if Ewers doesn't get hurt last year against Alabama, they win that game. I think most people would, agree with that. Ewers was really, really good. In his time, healthy last year, and I think Texas is only going to get better from last year. I think they went 8-4, 9-3 last year.
8-5.
8-5. Won 8 games last year. Texas is going to. I think this is the year that Texas is really, really, really good. I think this is the year Texas gets it done. I have them going 11-1, and I say I'll double down and say they win the Big 12, possibly earning them a playoff spot depending on the field. So
I would agree with that.
Obviously, Oklahoma at 2, the last remaining team. Oklahoma, very interesting year last year, very disappointing for their standards. I think they only won 7 games, 8 games.
6 and 7.
Oh, they won 6 games. Okay. Very disappointing last year. Brent Venables' first year as a head coach. First-year head coach, you get those jitters out of the way as an Oklahoma head coach. Obviously, not going to be easy replacing Lincoln Riley, but they bring back 12 guys from last year. They bring in 13 transfers, the number 8 transfer class in the country. They bring in the 4th best recruiting class in the entire country. Now, Oklahoma is good at bringing guys in, just because they're Oklahoma, despite who they have at head coach. Key losses: Anton Harrison, Marvin Mims. They did lose a lot of offensive production to the draft. But
Eric Gray.
Yeah, Eric Gray's gone
Wanya
too.
Morris.
Yeah, a lot of guys gone. But they did bring in.
I think the offensive line's the glaring hole for this team.
It usually is.
Yeah.
Just because when Lincoln Riley was there, it was such a quick hit offense. It still is, but like when he was there, such a quick hit offense that the offensive line didn't need to do much for a long period of time. So offensive line always something to worry about with Oklahoma. Still is. They bring in Jackson Arnold, top 10 quarterback recruit, to compete with Dylan Gabriel. Now I think Dylan Gabriel is going to start this year. Maybe they redshirt Arnold, and he'll play next year. But Arnold is someone to look out for in the coming years. He's going to be really, really good. Oklahoma, I have them winning 10 games. Way better.
I got them at 10-2 too.
Way better this year. Because they got their feet wet last year with Venables, and I think Venables is going to have a good defense. Yeah,
Venables goes out and he goes out this year in the portal and gets his defensive guys and more offense, and I think they got a leader in Dason McCullough from Indiana. I think he'll be an immediate impact player for Oklahoma on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, a guy up the middle who can get a ton of tackles and be the leader of that defense.
Right.
They bring in a good amount of guys. They bring in Brennan Thompson from Texas. They bring in Walter Rouse from Stanford. They bring in Trace Ford from Oklahoma State. They did lose Theo Weiss, one of their top receiving threats. Bring in Devon Sears from Texas State. Jacob Lacey from Notre Dame. Austin Stogner. I think he came back to Oklahoma, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he committed to Oklahoma, then transferred to South Carolina, then came back to Oklahoma. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's gonna be good this year. I don't see them having another bad year.
They'll at least neither of us can speak. at least win, 8-9 games. I think 10 wins is their ceiling.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, Oklahoma is going to be an interesting team to watch this year, just based on last year, how they're going to do rebound from that 6-win season that they're not accustomed to seeing. And as Brent Venables, he's got all his guys. He's most of this team is his. Just how is he going to do second year as a head coach of the Sooners? So you have Texas winning the Big 12?
I do.
This is boring. This is boring. We both had Florida State. We both had USC. Now we both have Texas. I was hoping to see some difference here. Maybe you sneak in a Kansas State going back to back or something.
No, I wish I could, but I just don't see it.
No, I had Utah winning the Big 12 or the Pac-12 last week. But it's like we both had the same two teams in the title game.
Yeah.
We'll obviously maybe not with the SEC, but it's always a little spicier down like towards the bottom. We're always gonna like the top 5 teams, or like everybody pretty much knows like the top 5 teams in each conference. There's not really gonna be any big surprises like in the predictions. Like maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but it's always gonna be consistent up towards the top in most of the conferences.
I got you. I'm gonna put Vanderbilt as 1.
And you stole my pick, man. Still gonna be the same. Yeah, man, the Big 12. Probably the most interesting.
The new look Big 12.
New look Big 12. Probably the most interesting team or most interesting conference to look out for this season. So many new teams, a lot of new head coaches. Like, it's just a lot. I think 4 teams are new in the Big 12. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 new teams added to the Big 12, and then this is the last season with Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. So it's going to go back to 12 teams next season.
It'll be the Big 12.
Go back to being the Big 12. It was the Big 10 before. They only had 10 teams, and now they're up to 14. Yeah, like, come on. This is like the Big 10 has 14 teams too, right? So like, why even keep like it used to be like when the Pac-12 was the Pac-10, like they actually changed their name to the Pac-12. Like, I don't know. I guess the Big 14 doesn't really sound good, so I guess I don't really blame them. But yeah, first podcast back live was a success. We'll be back better. Like, we obviously, get used to being back live. We were used to, recording, the podcast locally and stuff, getting this out to you guys. So we had a little, talking like we had a little bit of leeway. But next week, we'll be better prepared to, do the podcast live. Have a better product for you guys next week. Now, like I always say every week, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. Turn on post notifications so you guys never, ever miss a podcast episode. And you guys can catch us live every week. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you guys get your podcasts, we're there. And we will see you guys back next week for the Big 10 predictions next week. College football and the NFL right around the corner. Not really, but right around the corner. We appreciate you guys listening. We will see you guys next week.